And this is a Fox News Alert. Welcome to Hannity. Tonight, the Destroy Trump media is spiraling out of control by manufacturing made-up stories, spreading lies like we have never seen before. Fake news CNN, conspiracy TV, MSNBC, and other so-called news outlets have created what is an informational crisis that affects every American. It is so egregious, so damaging, and so dangerous to you, the American people. President Trump is now calling it a, quote, stain on America. We're going to dissect tonight the anatomy of these fake news smears meant to damage and destroy the president you elected. Now, former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, he will join us with reaction. And he has a major announcement that you're going to want to hear. And also tonight, an explosive Fox News report. The wife of the now demoted DOJ official who met with Fusion GPS worked for the opposition research firm that produced the fake news anti-Trump Russian dossier during the 2016 election. We'll have more on that breaking news tonight. And an ISIS-inspired terrorist with a pipe bomb strapped to his chest, exploding the device in the heart of New York City during morning rush hour today. Sebastian Gorka is here to explain how Americans have to get much tougher in this war on terror. But first, our breaking news opening monologue. We have been telling you since 2007 and 8 that literally we have fake news operations in this country, liberal, mainstream, to destroy Trump media. They have a vendetta, and they're showing it every day. Their number one goal is to damage and destroy the president you elected, and clearly by any means necessary. And spreading fake news helps them to do this. Now, we've been saying since 2008, journalism in America is dead, but what is happening now is far worse, more destructive, more than anything we could have imagined. This is now outright propaganda every day. For example, on Friday, fake news CNN, they go wall to wall, breathless reporting on a story. It turns out to be a big fat lie. Now, the Clinton News Network falsely claimed that Donald Trump Jr. received an email on September the 4th, 2016, that gave him special access to hacked DNC emails that were later released by WikiLeaks. Unfortunately, the report, as usual, completely wrong. Here's the truth. The email that was sent to Donald Trump Jr. was actually dated September 14th, not 4th, 2016, which is the day after WikiLeaks put out the DNC documents. Now, fake news CNN, they hyped the story as the big smoking gun about Trump and Russia collusion and claimed they had not one but two sources verifying this false claim. Take a look at CNN's original fake news reporting.
CNN has exclusive new details about a message sent in the final stretch of the 2016 campaign offering access to hacked WikiLeaks documents.
This email on September 4th, 2016 was sent to Donald Trump, then candidate Donald Trump Jr., and others in the Trump organization. The timeline is important here because on September 4th, that was months after the DNC was hacked and after their own emails became leaked. And it was a month before Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's emails were leaked by WikiLeaks.
If this was an attempt to give stolen emails, hacked emails to the Trump campaign, and the Trump campaign acted on it, you would have an argument that they were then in possession of stolen property, property they knew to be stolen.
Right.
Now, that can be a crime under federal law. It clearly can be a crime, by the way, under New York law.
Crime. No, not quite. Now, it didn't take long for the rest of the sheep in the liberal press, like conspiracy TV, MSNBC, to take CNN's fake news and spread it to their Trump-hating audience. You can't make this stuff up. Watch this.
This is coming into our NBC newsroom right now. Congressional investigators are trying to figure out who sent an email that gave Donald Trump, his son, and others a decryption key for hacked WikiLeaks documents.
This was about September 2016, right in the middle of the campaign when WikiLeaks was putting out some documents, hadn't put out other documents. Remember, the Russians had hacked the Democrats and handed this stuff over to WikiLeaks. It goes to the heart of the collusion question, right? Because WikiLeaks was essentially acting as an agent of Russian intelligence, publishing hacked emails that hurt the Democrats and helped Donald Trump.
So fake news CNN story about Donald Trump Jr. and WikiLeaks, it was a lie. In fact, CNN's report was so outrageous, other news outlets started calling them out, even the Washington Post. That gets interesting. Now, CNN was caught red-handed. They were forced to correct the record. Now, keep in mind, this is the same CNN. They used the motto, facts first. So we have a question tonight for the head of CNN, the chief of fake news, Jeff Zucker. Jeff, are you proud of your network? By the way, not the first time this year. Do facts come first, Jeff Zucker? When your network repeatedly tries to smear and slander the president with outright lies, you have become nothing but an extension of the DNC. And I have to tell you, that Donald Jr. story was devoid of facts. And after being humiliated on Friday, Zucker then sent his stenographer, Humpty Dumpty, Brian Stelter, to try and clean up this whole mess. Now, instead of profusely apologizing, like he should have, Humpty Dumpty tried to use his network's complete and utter fake news failure to attack President Trump. That's a nice way to try and fix it. Watch this.
With ABC's suspension of Ross still in the headlines, I asked CNN if there would be disciplinary action against Raju or his co-writer, Jeremy Herb. A spokeswoman said no, because the reporters followed CNN's standards process, which means that the anonymous sources they were using for the story were vetted and okayed ahead of time. Now, the sources had been reliable in the past, but they were not this time. On Friday night, President Trump seized on the recent corrections at a rally in Florida.
Look, reporters, journalists make mistakes. Our record as journalists in covering this Trump story and the Russian story is pretty good, especially compared to the record of Donald Trump and his serial lying.
Now, he is a bitter partisan. Now, it's even pathetic by fake CNN standards. Now, earlier today, the White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders, absolutely schooled. This is a 101 on how to be a press secretary. CNN's very aggressive and opinionated and biased Jim Costa after he tried to defend the network's false reporting. Watch this.
And I would just say, Sarah, that journalists make honest mistakes, and that doesn't make them fake news. But the question that I have...
But when journalists make honest mistakes, they should own up to them. Sometimes, and a lot of times you don't. But there's a difference. There's a very big... I'm sorry. I'm not finished. There's a very big difference between making honest mistakes and purposefully misleading the American people, something that happens regularly. You can't say, I'm not done. You cannot say... You cannot say... that it's an honest mistake when you're purposely putting out information that you know to be false.
Now, fake news CNN isn't alone in spreading lies and fake news aimed at hurting the president. A Washington Post reporter was forced to apologize this weekend after tweeting out this highly misleading photo about the crowd size at President Trump's rally on Friday. Turns out that image that you see right there, that was taken well before President Trump ever stepped on the stage. And President Trump responded to that fake news report by tweeting out photos during his speech that showed a packed house and writing, quote, "Oh, very different." At Dave Weigel over at the Washington Post put out a phony photo of an arena empty hours before I arrived at the venue with thousands of people outside on their way in. Real photos now show, as I spoke, packed house, many people unable to get in, demand apology and retraction from fake news Washington Post. The president added this, quote, "Dave Weigel of the Washington Post just admitted his picture was a fake, a fraud, showing an almost empty arena last night in my speech in Pensacola when, in fact, he knew the arena was packed, as shown also on TV. Fake news. He should be fired." Now, that photo is the perfect example of how the destroy Trump media, the biased media in this country, attempts to embarrass, delegitimize this president over insignificant, superfluous things at every turn. And just like in other examples, this one blew up in the fake news media's faces because the truth eventually, hopefully, does come out. And because President Trump, he refuses to sit back and let the media spread lies day in and day out. But for the press in this country, nothing is too small and too petty. They will literally attempt to use anything and everything to attack the president. Take a look at this headline from the New York Times this weekend. Quote, "Inside Trump's hour-by-hour battle for self-preservation." Now, the Times, the so-called investigative reporting over there, includes explosive information like the president has up to 12 Diet Cokes a day. That's pretty laughable. It's right up there with CNN's 2 scoops of ice cream for him, but only 1 for his guests. Now, the other bombshell fact from the New York Times report claims that President Trump watches up to 8 hours of television a day. Now, President Trump rightfully blasted the paper by tweeting, quote, "Another false story, this time in the failing New York Times, that I watch 4 to 8 hours of television a day. Wrong. Also, I seldom, if ever, watch CNN or MSNBC, both of which I consider fake news. I never watch Don Lemon who I once called the dumbest man on television. Bad reporting. The media in this country has a massive credibility crisis. Look at the headline, recent Politico Morning Consult poll. 46% think the media make up stories about Donald Trump. The American people don't trust the media anymore, and nor should they. It's because they're constantly, regularly peddling an agenda and fake news. Now, here's another couple of examples. Now, last week, both Bloomberg and Reuters, they ran wild with that story, claiming that the special counsel, Robert Mueller's team, had subpoenaed President Trump and his family's bank records from Deutsche Bank. Now, President Trump's legal team, they shot down those rumors, and eventually Bloomberg and Reuters had to admit they were wrong yet again and issue corrections. And if you think that's bad, there's, of course, last week, ABC News' Brian Ross. Well, he takes the crown for pushing fake news because earlier this month, Ross claimed that General Michael Flynn was prepared to testify that candidate Trump ordered him to contact the Russians. Take a look.
This certainly would seem to suggest that Michael Flynn had a fair amount of information to offer the special counsel in return.
That's right, George. He has promised full cooperation to the Mueller team. He's prepared to testify, we are told by a confidant, against President Trump, against members of the Trump family, and others in the White House. He is prepared to testify that President Trump, as a candidate, Donald Trump, directed him to make contact with the Russians, which contradicts all that Donald Trump has said at this point.
Then hours later, Brian Ross was forced to admit that he was completely wrong, and he attempted to correct the record yet again. This is an epidemic. Watch this.
David, a clarification tonight on something one of Flynn's confidants told us, and we reported earlier today. He said the president had asked Flynn to contact Russia during the campaign. He's now clarifying that, saying, according to Flynn, candidate Trump asked him during the campaign to find ways to repair relations with Russia and other hotspots. And then after the election, the president-elect asked him and told him to contact Russia on issues, including working together to fight ISIS.
By the way, he's suspended and is no longer allowed to cover President Trump. Shocking. Now, there's obviously a huge difference between Brian Ross's original report and what actually happened. That's why he got suspended for 4 weeks without pay, and he's been banned from reporting now on the president in the future. You would think with all these fake news embarrassments that maybe the media would end this hysterical and breathless ongoing daily reporting of the president and maybe just focus on facts and trying to get it right, supposedly for consumers of news.